Okay, so do not take this thing seriously, okay? It's just me thinking my thoughts on a certain little topic, so just keep that in mind. So, I saw a post, right, from Instagram, and it was basically about the fourth dimension. And ever since then, it got me thinking. Because it, it, the more I thought about it, the more confused I got. Right? Dimensions confuse probably everyone who doesn't have too much extensive knowledge in physics, right? He doesn't spend his life and years learning physics. So it confuses me, obviously. But now, I mean, when we're talking about dimensions, what are we talking about exactly? In the fourth dimension specifically. Because in the 3D world already, you have breadth, length, height, and all that. But when we're talking about the fourth dimension, what do we mean exactly? What is pertaining to that fourth dimension? Good. I read down an article. Actually, well, many people state that it's basically the space-time continuum. But how will this space-time continuum be presented as a dimension? When you look at it, its height in 2D is basically just an extension. It's just something it's an addition that's perpendicular to the plane of the two dimension, the 2D world, right? Because that's how it is. When we transition from 2D to 3D, you're technically just adding a perpendicular line to that plane that creates a third dimension. But when we're talking about 4D, how are we exactly adding that dimension to the third dimension? Because if you look at it, I guess, I mean, if you could explain it in such a way that if you take 3D and kind of like transform it into 2D, then it kind of makes sense. Because, for example, something like this, you take a cube, right, and you draw it on 2D, and then you put something that completely covers the cube. Then what you do is you just color the parts of the cube that's being covered by that object. And then once you transform this cube into 3D, this cube will have now three sides that are colored, right? And that object that was covering the cube at first now is perpendicular to all three sides at the same time. So it's kind of like a three dimension on its own that's enveloping a three dimension. 3D world enveloping a 3D world. Exactly like this, a cube inside a cube. That's how 4D is. But beyond that, my mind doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. I just can't think of what possible thing I could think of that will make sense. It's just it doesn't. Nothing makes sense basically. After that I could think of. But here's another thing. Is since we are this, I mean, this previous thing we talked about dimension, but 2D in itself, you call it two dimensions, right? But you can't physically enter into that world, right? You can't enter into two dimensions. Your two dimension can enter into three dimensions, and vice versa. But it's a reality that's different from our own, so it's a new world in that sense. But doesn't that make 4D a new world as well? Because the rules would obviously apply to us. It's a new reality. We just can't imagine that. It doesn't exist in our plane, so it's obviously different. It's a new world. But then that does not make it a dimension anymore. It makes it a different reality altogether. So does that mean it's 4D is just another dimension or another world? Because it's not along the lines of length, breadth, and height anymore, is it? That point is it's all really confusing to me. And yeah, and after that point, I can't think properly. Nothing makes sense for me, and I kind of just cap out at that point. But then again, this is nothing scientific. It's just me thinking on something and saying those thoughts. It's not to be taken out of context or to be like studying or something, because it's wrong, okay? There's no scientific research on this. It's just a thought, random generic thought, and I'm expressing my thoughts, and that's it. So don't think of it as, ooh, it's something different. I mean, who would think of it as something different? I'm being stupid. No one would. It's just a kid speaking his mind. It's probably stupid, obviously. None of this will make sense, but whatever. No. Especially he's thinking of the fact that I have never actually studied this, So it's obviously everything is wrong. But, it's a good thing to at least kind of think into it. To kind of open your mind up a bit. Probably think about stuff that never happens. I don't know if it's even good or not. But whatever, just that's why it confuses me. Basically, that's what I wanted to relay. Why dimensions confuse me is because you can take it in two different ways, and both of them make sense, but don't make sense at the same time. So yeah, like that's it basically.